In 1986, the FBI faced a devastating mystery. Two of their most valuable Soviet informants vanished, dragged back to Moscow, and executed. Someone inside American intelligence was feeding secrets to the enemy. The agency assigned their best analyst to lead the hunt, a quiet, religious family man named Robert Hanssen. For years, he searched for the mole. What his colleagues failed to realize was that the traitor stood right beside them all along. How did he fool everyone for 22 years? What drove him to betray his country?
Hanssen was one of the first spies to pass data to the Russians.
He took such great care to protect his own identity, essentially handling himself.
The Cold War was a battlefield fought in shadows. While armies stood ready on both sides of the Iron Curtain, the real war played out through spies, double agents, and stolen secrets. And in this hidden world, the FBI believed they held the upper hand. By the mid-1980s, American intelligence had successfully recruited several KGB officers willing to betray their homeland. These assets provided invaluable information about Soviet operations, military capabilities, and espionage activities on American soil. The FBI protected these informants carefully, assigning them code names and limiting knowledge of their identities to only the most trusted personnel. Then, in 1985 and 1986, disaster struck. Lieutenant Colonel Valery Martinov had joined the Soviet embassy in Washington in 1980. A few years later, he agreed to work as a double agent for the United States. He was motivated by money, the thrill of espionage, and a genuine belief that America posed little threat to ordinary Soviet citizens. Around the same time, the FBI also recruited another KGB officer named Sergei Motorin. American intelligence leveraged his personal vulnerabilities, including an extramarital affair, to gain his cooperation. Motorin provided extraordinary intelligence, including a comprehensive list of every KGB agent operating inside the Soviet embassy. Both men were suddenly recalled to Moscow under suspicious circumstances. Shortly after arriving, they were arrested, interrogated, and executed. The FBI was stunned. Someone had betrayed these assets. Someone with access to highly classified information had revealed their identities to the Soviets. A mole was operating inside American intelligence, and the agency had to find him before more lives were lost. The FBI turned to their Soviet Analytical Unit, a specialized division created to counter KGB and GRU espionage operations during the Cold War. The unit's supervisor was a 44-year-old special agent named Robert Hanssen.
The FBI once called him the most damaging spy in Bureau history.
He was intelligent, detail-oriented, and possessed deep knowledge of Soviet intelligence operations. He seemed like the perfect man to lead the hunt. What the FBI failed to understand was that Hanssen himself was the traitor they were searching for. Robert Hanssen joined the Federal Bureau of Investigation in January 1976. His early years at the FBI were spent in relatively mundane assignments. His early assignments involved white-collar crime cases and accounting matters within the criminal division in New York. Competent and hardworking, Hanssen nonetheless struck colleagues as socially awkward and difficult to connect with. In David Wise's book about Hanssen's betrayal, a former colleague described him as someone who lived in the shadows, the last person in the world anyone would invite for a drink. Hanssen preferred computers to people. Hours went into mastering new technologies and developing analytical tools that impressed his superiors. In March 1979, Hanssen finally achieved his long-desired goal, a transfer to counterintelligence. This was the FBI's front line in the war against Soviet espionage. Hanssen's new role involved building national databases to track Soviet operatives, compiling detailed profiles on KGB and GRU agents, and analyzing Soviet intelligence methods. He had access to some of America's most closely guarded secrets: the identities of double agents, ongoing surveillance operations, and classified assessments of Soviet capabilities. Almost immediately after joining this division, Robert Hanssen began spying for the enemy. The Soviets had no idea who he was. They had no opportunity to recruit him, blackmail him, or appeal to any ideological sympathies. Hanssen simply walked into the Manhattan office of Amtorg, a Soviet commercial trading agency that served as a front for GRU operations, and volunteered his services. His first gift to Moscow was devastating: the identity of the most valuable American asset inside the GRU. His codename was Tofat, and his real name was Dmitry Polyakov. Polyakov was a Soviet general who had been passing secrets to the United States for 17 years. He provided critical intelligence on Soviet strategic missiles, nuclear strategy, and military capabilities. He was considered one of the most important spies in American history. Hanssen betrayed him without hesitation. The GRU, perhaps suspicious of such an unexpected windfall, chose to wait before acting on the information. It was only 6 years later, after CIA mole Aldrich Ames also exposed Polyakov, that the Soviets finally arrested and executed him. By 1981, Hanssen had transferred to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. His new position in the budget unit of the Intelligence Division gave him insight into all of the FBI's intelligence and counterintelligence operations. He learned how resources were allocated, which operations were priorities, and which agents were being deployed against Soviet targets. He also became an expert on polygraph machines and successfully persuaded the FBI to limit their use. This decision would later protect him from detection. Robert Hanssen's method of communicating with his Soviet handlers was straight out of a Cold War spy manual. He would leave his home in the Washington suburb of Vienna, Virginia, and drive 3 minutes to a nearby park called Foxstone Park. Inside the park, he would walk to a footbridge and leave a plastic garbage bag containing classified documents or floppy disks. After making the drop, he would place a piece of white tape vertically on a signpost at the park's entrance, a signal visible to any KGB agent driving past. The agent would collect the materials, leave cash payment at another location, and place a horizontal piece of tape on the same signpost to confirm the exchange was complete. For 22 years, this system worked flawlessly. Hanssen was a man of contradictions. By day, he worked tirelessly to protect America from Soviet espionage. He created software to help the FBI track the movements of Soviet diplomats and personnel more efficiently. He was considered a technical wizard, whose innovations made the Bureau's counterintelligence operations more effective. By night, he handed over America's most sensitive secrets to the very Russians he publicly condemned as godless. He was also a devout Catholic. He attended Mass nearly every day, spent Sundays at church with his wife Bonnie and their 6 children, and was active in Opus Dei, a conservative Catholic organization. According to reports, he even confessed his espionage activities to a priest, knowing that the sanctity of the confessional would keep his secret safe. Yet he continued betraying his country. In 1985, Hanssen wrote a letter to Viktor Cherkashin, the KGB's chief of counterintelligence at the Soviet embassy. In it, he warned the Soviets that 3 of their officers, Boris Yuzin, Sergei Motorin, and Valery Martinov, had been recruited by American intelligence. Unknown to Hanssen, CIA mole Aldrich Ames had already revealed the same names 4 months earlier. Hanssen's letter served as double confirmation, convincing the Soviets that the information was accurate. As a result, Motorin and Martinov faced the same fate as other exposed assets. Yuzin was sentenced to 15 years in a Soviet labor camp. Hanssen continued his betrayals throughout the late 1980s. In 1988, he handed over more than 530 pages of classified documents, including a study on Soviet penetrations of the FBI, a study he had personally directed. He revealed the identities of Soviets the FBI had attempted to recruit. When Moscow wanted to know how much the Americans understood about Soviet missile capabilities, they turned to Hanssen, who provided them with a detailed assessment. His most infamous betrayal came in September 1989. The FBI and NSA had spent years constructing a secret tunnel beneath the new Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. The project cost hundreds of millions of dollars and was designed to allow American intelligence to eavesdrop on Soviet communications. The FBI had purchased a townhouse nearby to serve as the tunnel's entrance. Hanssen revealed the tunnel's existence to Moscow, rendering the entire operation worthless. Author David Wise later observed, "Perhaps it was fitting that a spy tunnel was betrayed by a mole, a creature that burrows underground." Over his career, Hanssen handed over more than 6,000 pages of classified documents. He compromised dozens of intelligence operations. He sent Soviet spies who had agreed to work for America to their deaths. In exchange, he received approximately $600,000 in cash and diamonds. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Hanssen temporarily broke contact with his handlers. The chaos in Moscow seemed to mirror his own increasingly erratic behavior. In 1993, he physically assaulted a subordinate named Kimberly Lichtenberg, dragging her by the arm and screaming at her for leaving a meeting early. The attack left her with serious injuries. Hanssen received only a 5-day suspension. He also attempted to approach a GRU officer directly, offering information about American double agents. The GRU officer, believing it was a trap, complained to the U.S. State Department. Despite these warning signs, Hanssen remained above suspicion. Meanwhile, the FBI and CIA knew a mole still existed. The 1994 arrest of Aldrich Ames, a CIA officer who had spied for the Soviets, explained some of the intelligence losses. But Ames had limited access to certain operations that had been compromised. Someone else was providing information to Moscow. The Felix Bloch case deepened suspicions. Bloch was a State Department official suspected of selling secrets to the Soviets. In 1989, Hanssen warned the KGB that Bloch was under surveillance. The KGB immediately cut ties with Bloch, warning him over a phone call secretly recorded by the FBI. A contagious disease is suspected. Since Ames had zero access to the FBI's investigation of Felix Bloch, someone else inside the bureau was clearly the source. The FBI arrested another mole in 1996, Special Agent Earl Edwin Pitts, who had also spied for Moscow. But investigators remained convinced that yet another traitor existed. Pitts simply lacked access to some of the operations that had been compromised. Special Agent Thomas Kimmel was particularly suspicious. The Russians had barely asked Pitts for any significant information, suggesting they already had a better source. And Pitts knew absolutely nothing about the tunnel beneath the Soviet embassy. The investigation turned toward former KGB officers who had worked in the United States during the years when America lost its best assets. The FBI offered up to $1 million for information. They got minimal results. For 2 years, the investigation mistakenly focused on a CIA officer named Brian Kelly. He endured constant surveillance, polygraph examinations, and the threat of death penalty charges. The real breakthrough finally came in 2000. The FBI identified a retired KGB officer who had worked in Washington and was now running a private business in Moscow. To lure him out of Russia, they collaborated with an American corporation to invite him to a fake business meeting in New York. During the meeting, the former KGB officer revealed he had kept a copy of the KGB's file on their American mole, insurance he had gathered before leaving intelligence work. The FBI agreed to pay him $7 million for the file. The documents were a goldmine. They contained letters the mole had written to his handlers, detailed instructions for dead drops, and even a recorded conversation between a KGB agent and the American traitor. Although Hanssen had always protected his identity, the file contained his code name Ramon Garcia rather than his real name. The evidence pointed directly toward him. FBI analyst Bob King recognized an unusual phrase in one of the letters, purple pissing, attributed to General George Patton. King remembered Hanssen using that exact phrase years earlier. King immediately said he believed it was Bob Hanssen. Counterintelligence agent Michael Wagesback listened to the recorded conversation again. Suddenly, recognition struck him. He realized the voice on the tape belonged to Hanssen. The most damning evidence was a black plastic garbage bag Hanssen had used to deliver classified documents. His fingerprints were found on the inner layer. The FBI had overwhelming evidence against Robert Hanssen. The fingerprints on the garbage bag, the recorded voice, the distinctive phrases in his letters, all of it pointed directly at him. But evidence alone was not enough. Catching him in the act would guarantee a conviction that could hold up in any courtroom. The Bureau needed to witness him committing espionage with their own eyes. They devised an elaborate trap. In January 2001, the FBI offered Hanssen a fake promotion to the Senior Executive Service, an exclusive tier of federal government positions that came with higher pay and greater prestige. It was the kind of recognition Hanssen had craved throughout his career. He accepted the offer without hesitation and moved into a small office on the 9th floor of FBI headquarters. What Hanssen failed to realize was that every inch of that office had been carefully prepared for his arrival. Hidden cameras were positioned to capture his every movement. Microphones recorded every conversation he had within those walls. His phones, both at work and at his home in Virginia, were tapped around the clock. Every call he made and every call he received was monitored by teams of investigators listening in real time. The surveillance extended far beyond his office. The FBI purchased a house directly across the street from Hanssen's residence in Virginia. Agents moved in and set up observation posts, watching his comings and goings at all hours of the day and night. They documented when he left for work, when he returned home, and every trip he made in between. Hanssen was also assigned a new assistant, Eric O'Neill, a young operative who appeared eager to learn from a senior agent. In reality, O'Neill's true mission was surveillance. He was tasked with keeping close tabs on Hanssen, noting his behavior, his schedule, and any suspicious activities. O'Neill played his role convincingly, earning Hanssen's trust while secretly reporting everything back to the investigation team. By February 2001, the operation had grown massive in scale. Tools commonly used by spies for signaling intelligence contacts and marking dead drop locations. Hanssen began to sense that something was wrong. His so-called promotion had brought him zero meaningful work. His desk sat empty. His phone remained silent. He had completely lost access to classified information, the very thing that had made him valuable to the Russians for over 2 decades. The walls seemed to be closing in around him. Growing suspicious, he composed a letter to his Russian handlers. In it, he announced that he was lying low for the time being and would resume contact the following year. He believed he could wait out whatever storm was brewing and return to his double life once the danger had passed. But the FBI already knew his next move. Based on a letter he had sent the previous year, investigators learned that Hanssen planned to make a dead drop at Foxstone Park on February 18, 2001. The date and location were already marked on their calendar. All they had to do was wait. That Sunday afternoon, Hanssen arrived at the park at exactly 4:34 p.m. He stepped out of his car and walked along the familiar path toward the footbridge. Just as he had done countless times before, he deposited a package containing classified materials in the designated spot. Then he turned and began walking back to his vehicle. When he reached his car minutes later, FBI agents emerged from the shadows and surrounded him. Some carried automatic weapons. There was no escape. There was no explanation he could offer. The game was finally over. Case agent Doug Gregory approached him slowly and told Hanssen that this was a sad day for all of them. On July 6, 2001, Robert Hanssen appeared in federal court and pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage.
The worst spy in U.S. history, our first cyber spy in charge of developing cybersecurity for the FBI. And his ego was flattered.
Before the judge handed down his sentence, Hanssen was given the opportunity to speak. He read a prepared statement to the court. "I apologize for my behavior. I am shamed by it. I have opened the door for calumny against my totally innocent wife and children. I have hurt so many deeply." His wife Bonnie had discovered his espionage activities once before, years earlier in their marriage. He had confessed to her, begged for forgiveness, and promised to stop. She believed him. Instead, he continued betraying his country for another decade, lying to her face every single day. Robert Hanssen was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison located in Colorado, the most secure correctional facility in the entire American prison system. Inmates there spend 23 hours a day locked inside their cells. He spent the remaining years of his life in solitary confinement, cut off from the outside world. On June 5, 2023, Robert Hanssen was found dead in his cell. He was 79 years old. For 22 years, Robert Hanssen had lived a double life. He attended church every morning and sold secrets every evening. He hunted moles by day and operated as one by night. He betrayed his country, his colleagues, his friends, and his family, all while hiding in plain sight. The deadliest spy in FBI history, and for more than 2 decades, absolutely everyone missed it.